America's hidden keystone collapse, where every other market rests on a lie. Hi, my name is Sarah Trumbull. I'm the founder and CEO of the Job Applicant Perspective. That's the world's first anonymous crowdsourced hiring reputation system. Like Yelp in a world of professionally mandated fine dining with no health department and no FDA. This is the level of go-to-market awareness for my website, as well as public service for all the gaslighting out there. I write these blogs and they're being read by people from like the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, Axios, Atlantic, and more. But I'm trying to make this accessible to a larger audience by creating these videos and putting them on YouTube. Because the kind of paradigm shift that I'm driving at requires both sides of the market to change their behavior, which I know is a big ask, but also, in my defense, I'm right. So, one cannot get something done without starting at the beginning. So America's Hidden Keystone Collapse, I'm going to start from the beginning of it. And if you want to read this, you can see it on my blog as well on Substack. And I'll link that in the bio below. Opening scene. Every other economy in America, housing, education, healthcare, municipal budgets, consumer spending, they rest on one fragile assumption, that people can reliably find work and that income flows are real. But the system we built to connect people to jobs no longer works, and no one replaced the trust infrastructure that once held it together. For decades, we treated the U.S. labor market as a given, a silent foundation beneath every other economic structure. But when the foundation quietly cracked, everything built on top of it became unstable, from mortgages to healthcare to tax revenues. We built the entire U.S. economy on a glass floor, and now the cracks are spreading. Who this is for? This isn't just a job story, it's an economic stability story. If you operate inside any market depending on predictable income flows, this collapse affects you. Job seekers and workers facing broken signals, ghost jobs, and churn-driven platforms. Employers and small businesses paying for visibility while drowning in noise and unverified applicants. Recruiters and workforce boards navigating untrustworthy signals while advising job seekers on a distorted market. Policymakers and economists modeling economies based on unreliable hiring data while downstream cracks deepen. Municipal leaders and educators watching credentialed inflations, tax-based erosion, and instability spread locally. Journalists and researchers tracking the deeper systemic implications of a market where trust no longer flows. If you hire, apply, regulate, invest, or plan around income stability, you're inside the story. Core thesis: the labor market isn't just one sector of the economy, it's the spine of everything else. Income stability, civic participation, and belonging. And yet, we dismantled the trust infrastructure that kept hiring legitimate. We replaced it with opaque, engagement-driven platforms designed to monetize churn, not outcomes. We built trillions of dollars of downstream economic activity on unverified data, assuming the glass floor would hold. This wasn't just a policy failure. It was a structural error in economic design. We removed the guardrails holding the labor market together without understanding the knock-on effects across the entire U.S. economy. How the trust infrastructure collapsed. Hiring once depended on two pillars of trust, each backed by structural incentives. Number one, newspapers and classifieds. For decades, local newspapers guided hiring trust. Employers paid to post jobs. Financial stake implied legitimacy. Newspapers self-police scams to protect their credibility, buttressed by government regulations that treated them like quasi-public utilities through postal classifications, advertiser accountability, and newsroom codes, like FTC, Neuron. I put a couple citations there. Online platforms inherited no such accountability. Posting a job is now effectively free, leading to surging ghost job listings. For instance, a 2024 study by Greenhouse found that 18 to 22% of job ads are never filled or real, from the Wall Street Journal. Survey reports up to 40% of companies admit posting fake job listings in the past year, from The Guardian. These are called lemons. This is lemons. When friction disappears and ease is king, truth becomes uneconomical, especially when engagement is profit. The newspaper never sold SaaS, software as a service style job slots because its business model was anchored to verified information, not engagement metrics. Free job postings weren't a thing either, on purpose. Online labor platforms inverted that logic, monetizing clicks, not clarity. They profit from the unpaid time of the very users whose trust they erode. Job seekers have always purchased job ads by spending their time, full stop. This is not in question. This is what the labor market is. That's what it is. Employers may not have ever thought of them, not really, as anything but data points, but the newspaper considered them stakeholders they would lose money by misleading. In moving the market online, the way employers saw it, instead of the way it actually was, the talent acquisition solutions industry has been steadily collapsing it while gaslighting the labor force that drives their profits unpaid for the privilege. It's economic conscription. But unlike the military, there's no pay, no honor, and no exit date. It's a lottery. Just endless auditioning for the unregulated algorithm. The unpaid labor of job seekers powers a $600 billion global industry, and somehow we still call them lazy. No one wants to work, cry people who neglect to mention how profitable the free labor of the U.S. workforce is to billionaires investing in talent companies. From this collapse emerged two axioms I audaciously write for the online labor market. Time as currency. When job seeker time is not treated as currency, the labor market degrades into rent seeking in disguise. A magic claw machine for one side of a two-sided market is a magic claw machine for the other. Yeah? We don't talk about unverified shoe postings and a shoe buyer shortage. That's not how it works, because that's not what markets do. Empathy as market trust. A marketplace with empathy for its stakeholders is a marketplace operating with trust. A marketplace with empathy is without empathy is one operating without it. Anytime you have a vendor operating without empathy, they are operating an engagement trap. I will talk about it more in the next blog post after this, but essentially the flow of info goes like this. Empathy leads to vulnerability, leads to honest signal, leads to healthy market. Lack of empathy leads to performance, leads to distorted signal, leads to a lemon market. Even politicians saying that was a way to encourage a lemon market. Human gatekeepers. Before platforms, reputations circulated through trusted networks, local networks, workforce boards, recruiters, unions, and chambers of commerce, vetted employers, sharing warnings and endorsements. Job seekers relied on community knowledge rather than keywords or algorithms. Human trust layer is now gone. Platforms fragmented and atomized the hiring process. I can't say words. All right. The local reputational layer that has always stopped employers from using job ads as brand advertising is now gone too. The breakpoint. Platforms dismantled both trust systems and no equivalent structure replaced them. Posting costs collapse, creating a flood of ghost jobs and scams. No reputational filter remains. Legitimacy is no longer required, signals by the act of posting only. Applicant tracking systems filter out applications invisibly. 70% of resumes never reach a human reviewer, according to recent estimates from Scale.jobs. Platforms dismantled both trust systems and nothing replaced them, human or otherwise. In modern hiring, visibility costs nothing, trust is unmoored, accountability has vanished. It is structurally incoherent in any other functioning market. There is no rational universe in which market vendors should feel entitled to the time, energy, and trust of market stakeholders, participants, without earning it and without consequence for betraying it. And yet this is the backbone of the online labor market. At its root, this is not a technological or logical failure. It is a psychological one. Job seekers map their identities to being unemployed. Market stewards and owners, employers, economists, journalists, and policymakers map theirs to being not unemployed. This identity breeds moral distance to achieve ego safety. It creates a market designed not to serve its talent pipeline, but to disassociate the stewards from it. The dysfunction is not born of malice, it's learned behavior. I guess a level of behavioral conditioning that signals in-group belonging. To stay safe in a hierarchy of this nature is to signal your identity as a member of the in-group. You must look away when harm occurs. It's a variation of the shared superiority community I spoke to in Emotional Ripples of the Obedience Economy. But signaling in-group status with their market vendors leads the labor market stewards to appalling economic folly of the most basic kind. What do the needs of the unemployed have to do with me, say market stewards with economics degrees operating a two-sided market with the unemployed with an utterly straight face? Legit. It's like parents saying, what do the needs of my children have to do with me when it comes to Disney World? Why are you at Disney World at all? That's what they have to do. It's like boyfriends going to the flower market saying, what do the needs of girlfriends have to do with me at the flower market? What are we talking about here? What does the market exist for? That's what they have to do with you. The titans of business would get an F on an Econ 101 paper as the professor laughed them out of the room for designing a labor market with such a basic flaw. Policymakers have the governance blind spot. Policymakers have effectively obscured the backbone of the U.S. labor market to outsource it to private platforms with no guardrails, and the results are alarming. There is no federal agency that verifies whether a job posting is real, active, or already filled. Job boards function in a regulatory void. A void, FTC mentions, but little systemic oversight. There are no required outcome metrics tracking whether job postings lead to hires, keeping employers and platforms from needing to justify their signal quality. Platforms such as Indeed, LinkedIn, and ZipRecruiter have become the de facto infrastructure for hiring, but they have no civic responsibility or transparency obligations around truth or efficacy. This is an individualized algorithmic platform. My God, if there were no accountability for lying to the individualized customers, why on God's green earth would they tell you the truth? Like, it's so much more profitable the other way. In contrast, newspapers of the analog era were regulated, had reputations to uphold, and were historically subject to public accountability. They also, the paper that I bought was the paper that you bought. The platform that I look at is not the platform that you look at. They're totally different. And platforms bear none of this. Downstream instability across every other economy. When labor market trust collapse, everything downstream fractures. Housing markets, mortgages assume stable income flows that no longer exist. Healthcare markets, insurance pools destabilize when workers churn jobs or can't access benefits. Education markets, credential inflation explodes as people pay for access signals that no longer reliably convert into jobs. Municipal economies, tax bases shrink when unemployment drags and small businesses close. This is not a jobs problem. It is a systemic economic stability problem disguised as one. Why it matters? This is not just a policy oversight. It's historic miscalculation. We dismantled the scaffolding that made labor markets trustworthy. We built national economic planning on distorted, unverified hiring data. We assumed household stability would hold even as we removed the infrastructure that sustained it. The result, financial fragility hiding in plain sight. If the labor market is the economy's glass floor, we're standing on cracks spreading beneath it. The TJAP tie-in. This is why we're building the job applicant perspective, the first attempt to rebuild the missing trust infrastructure at scale. Verified crowdsourced job post level reviews, a civic function disguised as a startup. It's forensic audit of the labor market from people who don't benefit from the clickbait engagement trap. Municipal SaaS integrations, giving cities tools to restore local hiring legitimacy. It adds a second interconnecting trust layer into the system to have geographic municipalities in nearby areas as our SaaS piece, as well as bringing financial value to local small governments. Shared hiring realities reconnect applicants, employers, and municipalities around credible signal. Just one scammer on LinkedIn made $440,000 in 2024 abusing affiliate marketing, taking real jobs and sending job seekers trying to find work to get their identity stolen. This was only one of the 6,000 scammers Jay Jones has taken down on LinkedIn and over 32,000 fake posts. The only people who benefit from silencing and not amplifying this knowledge are the platforms and the scammers. If he could do this alone, imagine what millions can do together. Do you know how often he has written to LinkedIn how they won't hire him? And if you think about it, whether or not you're going to LinkedIn for jobs, you're getting scammed on LinkedIn, or you're following Jay on LinkedIn, you're still spending more time on LinkedIn. That is the level to which I don't respect this business model. Transparency dissolves shame. It improves matches. It makes room for dignity. This is about rebuilding collective power. Shared witness leads to shared identity, which can lead to collective action, not just applying for jobs, but demanding a functional market. My God, there's no farmers' fields. There's no tribal forests. What do you think is going to happen? What do you think is going to happen? This is not a charity. This is a good business for a labor market struggling with engagement despite the massive carrot of food, clothing, and shelter offers to engage with its users by isolating and shaming them is bananas illogical. Taking a page out of online gaming drives the engagement via community and connection, not submission, desperation, and silence. We create the community, the repair, and thus the vulnerability that is the hallmark of transparency. And for the first time in a decade or two, a market built on trust. I don't know what's the logic that doesn't logic. The math that doesn't math here is wild to me. We are not just fixing search friction. We're rebuilding the social architecture that makes trust possible. To see more of what I have planned, you can check on our SSRM paper. It's an open source network. I put it for people who are academics to vet my trust infrastructure. I have 3 interconnecting layers within the system for trust infrastructure with proper investment that I would do. Hemingway once said, "The world breaks everyone, and afterwards many are strong at the broken places." We are those broken places now. We are. And rebuilding trust is how we become strong again. Civic leaders, workforce boards, and local businesses, we are here to explore TJAP partnerships, to restore hiring legitimacy where it matters most, in their communities. We broke trust and the cost is profound. But the only way out is through, and we begin by earning it back, starting with the small businesses most harmed by the silence of this system in the local areas. I began this work in rural Michigan for a reason. The cracks of the national economy always appear first in local small soil, always. I write these blogs as a level of my Federalist Papers somehow to grab the attention of market stewards and owners. I bring my systems-oriented brain to help educate them to understand the great system they're inside. But I write it also to drive oxygen into the great coal forge that has been holding its breath in silence to stay safe from being further excluded from belonging and financial safety. I throw matches and fuel at a great American engine that, to save its own life, needs to combust in a great historic explosion of voice and agency. The rhythm at the song of our economy's heart cannot be supply and silence, supply and submission, supply and performance, supply and obedience. No, the great engine at the foundation of our economy, if it is ever to be one, again, has to be a great heartbeat of supply and demand. We don't need submission and obedience to stay safe in an economic heart of a global economy. We need a magnificent, wild engine of tension, power, agency, and fire. We don't need to be perfect people. We need to be true ones. The modern writers echo Hemingway, and we should listen. I liked it. We're shattering the silence, rising defiant, shouting in the quiet, "You're not alone." I'm passionate about this, but in my defense, I don't like collapsed global economies, and I definitely don't like this at all. I don't like unpaid labor that's disrespected at all. Not a fan. I read about the Civil War. Wasn't cool. Not a fan. So yeah, so that's me. Please stop by the Job Applicant Perspective, again, the anonymous crowdsourced hiring reputation system. Call me your Alexandra Hamilton, but sorry, not sorry, I'm right. And systems don't lie. 1 and 1 is still 2. I can do this with first principles. I can do it with economic data. I can do it with sociology, with economics, with mathematics. And the problem is that I can do it with all of them very easily, because whether or not you describe the red barn with economics, with mathematics, with chemistry, with whatever, it's still the same red barn. And this is still the same non-existent market. This is the problem here, is that no matter how hard you look for Santa Claus at the North Pole, he's not there. And no matter how hard you try to make this a market, it isn't. It isn't, and hasn't been for some time. So we need to change this. The economic heartbeat of the U.S. economy is not supply submission. It is supply demand. We need demands from the labor force before it suffocates completely. So that's the thinking. I think my economics is pretty good there. So anyway, stop by today, and thank you so much.